Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So, we are coming at you with another tier list as we have had a new selection pack drop fairly recently. And there's quite a bit to talk about with it. Not only do we have, archetypes like Shadal, as well as, GMX for hire and Dark Lord being introduced. But on top of that, we've seen some other archetypes get some more support. And of course, there are some new staple cards, such as Forbidden Crown and Dominus Spark, all of which are going to have their own impact on the metagame. So we're going to cover 20 of the newest, most powerful, and or most popular decks currently in the game and place them here on the tier list. Now, there are far more than just these 20 decks that are competitively viable, and even decks in the Rogue tier are still very capable of hitting Master 1 or topping a tournament. You just might need to be a more dedicated pilot or skilled player to do so. But without further ado, I think we're just going to go ahead and start rating all of these cards or archetypes on the tier list here. Starting with Sky Striker. I've been saying it and I'll keep saying it. Sky Striker is a tier 1 deck. It does have some decent matchups in the current metagame, most notably, of course, going to be Cool Tune, but more than that, it is just a very powerful deck in its own right. And despite the fact that it did lose out on a couple of Radiant Typhoon cards on the latest ban list, Forbidden Crown is a new quick play spell card that the deck can very easily make use of. It's kind of weird to think that like any good quick play spell is just also Sky Striker support, but it is very true, and it's very true of the Forbidden Crown as well. Definitely expect to see more Sky Striker decks making use of that card and being at least slightly more powerful as a result. Now, even though it's tier 1, I don't think Sky Striker is like the best deck in the meta, but it's definitely up there. Okay, Blue Eyes, I've been putting in tier 3 for so long, and I think I'm finally just going to bite the bullet and put it down in Rogue. It's just not evolved at all as time has gone on. I guess it can make use of the new Dominus Spark, but that doesn't really hugely impact the power level of the deck. I think that ultimately its combo line and end board really are becoming more and more antiquated. I've compared it a lot to Sword Soul in the past. I think that comparison still holds true, where the deck didn't get worse, everything else just got better, and it failed to evolve or keep up. Sword Soul did eventually get to benefit from some of that follow-up branded support, and even though Blue Eyes does have cards in the Overframe collection, I gotta be honest, they really don't change the deck very much at all. So I'm gonna keep Blue Eyes pretty firmly in Rogue. Also joining Blue Eyes in Rogue is going to be GMX for hire. Probably, I don't know, it's really weird to compare these two decks. They're honestly probably not that far apart in terms of power level, but GMX for hire is a deck that is, it's a new variant, of course. For hire has been around for a minute, but not only did for hire get Rex Ride for hire, about a week and a half, or I guess at the time this is going out, closer to 2 weeks ago, but now in the latest selection pack, we also have the GMX archetype. Now, I do usually like to put all of the new archetypes or archetypes that got new support on the tier list, even if they end up being Rogue. But GMX as a pure deck would not even make the cut as Rogue. That would probably just be casual. But GMX as an engine played with For Hire, that is honestly a lot more appealing. For Hire could also use Canine as an engine instead of GMX, because the new Rex Ride for Hire is a level 5 monster. I think both variants are about equal in power level, roughly speaking. I think the GMX variant might actually be a bit better though. So it's still a Rogue deck, but definitely one that's not horrible by any means. And next up we have Orcust, which I am going to continue to put in tier 2. Orcust is just one of those decks that has a lot of staying power. I often reference the fact that it tends to have a pretty high win rate. If you look at the official in-game statistics for, cards and used in various decks, the Orcust cards tend to hover around 53% right now, which is not the highest. Orcust did actually, in relatively recent history, just a couple of months ago, have the highest win rate according to official in-game statistics, but now 53%, not the highest anymore, but still very respectable. Actually the same win rate overall that Sky Striker has. So Orcust is still a very solid pick in the current metagame, and does actually get buffed by the new Dominus Spark. You can definitely use it there. Elf Note. I'm going to continue to put in tier 2 until it gets its follow-up support. It just needs either June Pride and or the new Power Patron cards, ideally both to come out, and then I think Elf Note will be a very respectable tier 1 deck. Not only that, but whenever we get the Overframe Synchron cards, Synchron Elf Note also becomes a very, very good variant of the deck in its own right. Until then though, I'm going to have to continue to put Elf Note towards the top of tier 2. Still a really good deck, don't get me wrong, but definitely incomplete. Man with the Mark / Odeon does actually enjoy the buff of having not only Dominus Spark, but also Solemn Accusation, both very solid pieces of support for this deck. That said, I am going to have to continue to put it in tier 3. I don't think it's bad by any means. Of course, tier 3 decks are still quite good, and it'll probably be towards the top of tier 3, but it does have the notable drawback of being back row based, which means that going second's always going to be a little bit more rough for it than going first, and more so than other decks, right? But I do think that Odeon / Man with the Mark is still a very powerful deck and does enjoy a lot of new benefits from this latest selection pack. Okay, now next up is Majestus Fairy Tale, which got a huge buff from the latest pack. It has received not only the Endymion cards, but also Genea of the Ring. So now all Majestus Fairy Tale is missing to really be full power is Charmers in Quartet, the Charmer Link 4. Now, I will say, that's a pretty big thing to miss. So the cards that we got in this pack don't really buff the end board of Majestus Fairy Tale, but they hugely buff the consistency, which is still going to be very important. I'm going to continue to put the deck in tier 2, probably about here, but it is moving up. Last tier list, I put it towards the end of tier 2. Here, it's going to be more towards the top. And once we get the Charmer in Quartet Link 4, depending on what the rest of the meta looks like whenever that drops, we could potentially even see this deck become like lower end of tier 1. Maybe. We'll see. Again, it just depends on what order everything comes out in. All right, Predaplant has maintained its position as a very solid rogue deck in the current meta. Not quite tiered status, I think, but up there for sure. I actually do think it's better than Blue Eyes. That Primitive card that can search any fusion card, that is a card with fusion in its name, or polymerization for that matter, is so good, and really was a huge buff for the deck. Yeah, Predaplate's like a really real archetype now as far as like competitive staying power. I think it'll remain one of those really solid rogue decks for pretty much the foreseeable future. All right, Shadal. I do have to put this one lower down than I think just about anything else on the tier list. The new Shadal cards are good, don't get me wrong, but Shadal as an archetype, it's weird because typically you would see Shadal combined with other fusion-based decks like Tear Lament, or I've seen Dracotail Phimena and a lot of, modern Shadal decks, even ones with the new support. So it's weird, like, for Shadal as an archetype to try to do its own thing. At least it feels a little bit weird to me. It does still feel a little bit weak, I'm not going to lie. Not that Shadal is a weak deck overall, but I think it is going to end up pretty much at the bottom of the decks that I have featured here at the very least. It's not bad, it's just... The other thing is, when I was doing my research, I couldn't find any significant, like, tournament or paper play results like TCG, OCG. That also kind of makes me think this Shadal support's going to, like... Not really, I don't know. It's not that it's bad. Again, they are great cards, but it's not going to elevate Shadal any higher than it has been recently, just kind of like helping it keep up with, power creep amongst all other decks. So I think Shadal is going to remain like a solid like middle or lower rogue deck, but not one of the best from the new pack. All right, Magnet Warrior is still, I think, really good despite the fact that Fossil Dyna and Earth Barrier Statue got banned. I don't think those cards were carrying Magnet Warrior at all, because those often came out, towards the end of Magnet Warrior's combo line. Or in the case of Fossil Dyna, it would have to be the very end, because obviously the Magnet Warrior player wouldn't be able to special summon otherwise. And they're still going to have stuff like Baron de Fleur, Flux Oschenfeld, and other end board pieces that are going to support, the end board. And I don't think, again, that these floodgates that were tacked on at the end were super pivotal. I think Magnet Warrior's gotten less popular, sure, but I don't think it's any less powerful than it was before. I mean, well, obviously it is a little bit less powerful on the end board, but not significantly so. Yeah, I don't know. I think that Magnet Warrior is still a really good deck, and I'm definitely still down to call it tier 2 for sure. All right, Yummy. I'm going to put Yummy in tier 3 still, even though it did get the 3rd copy of Yummy Snatchy back. What I'm really waiting is for it to get at least one more copy of Cupsy Yummy back. That will make the deck feel a lot better, to play pure especially. I have seen, you know, like Fiendsmith Yummy won a Challenger Cup recently. Mitsurugi Yummy is still definitely a thing. It benefits from Dominus Spark being a light archetype, and a lot of the other things like Fiendsmith and Mitsurugi that it mixes with can also still play the Dominus Spark because they're dark or light. So I think the deck has a ton of really solid potential right now. It really is just those banlist hits at this point in the meta are starting to feel a little bit harsh for Yummy. I think they can have one copy of Cupsy Yummy back, and that would be completely fine. I'm hoping for that at least in the future. All right, Radiant Typhoon. I think this is still not only a tier 1 deck, but also still maybe just the best deck in the meta currently. Rapier being semi-limited is probably the hit that is going to matter the most. I mean, yeah, Vision and Chance getting semi-limited are annoying consistency hits, but Rapier being semi-limited has affected how you navigate the combo line. Nowadays, a lot of these builds have included a copy of Ram to make their Zodiac plays feel at least a little bit similar to how they did when Rapier was at 3. But yeah, it's definitely still just one of the best decks in the current meta right now. I would argue maybe the best, but we'll see as we put more things in the tier 1 spot. All right, Mitsurugi definitely benefits from the new Dominus Spark, and I think is still a very solid deck in the current metagame. I don't know if I'll call it tier 1. I really like the deck, and it feels like a tier 1 deck whenever I play it, but if I'm being a little bit more objective and looking at its power level relative to everything else, I think here in tier 2, below Elf Note is fine. Yeah, that's a fine enough spot for it. Dark Lord. I am going to put this deck in Rogue, but it is a really, really solid Rogue deck. I think I'll do this. Maybe even like that? Something like that, yeah. Yeah, no, Dark Lord has... I don't know. I think Dark Lord might actually be a little bit better than Blue Eyes right now. It's definitely... The new support is really, really good. The Evening Star Fusion Monster is such a good end board piece. Dark Lord needed something like this really badly, I think. I haven't, been playing the deck by any means. I'm not an expert on it, but I do really think that it's been wanting to have something else to put on the end board for the opponent's turn. Just looking at the archetype and what it already has access to. Love the support. It has, from what I remember, actually seen some success in tournaments recently. Not just recently in Master Duel, but even, historically since the new support came out, TCG, OCG, it'll crop up every now and then in, paper play tournaments. But yeah, I'll put it here towards the top of Rogue. It's a really, really solid deck thanks to the new support now. All right, Cool Tune. I'm going to put in tier 1, but I don't know. I almost want to put it a little bit lower than Sky Striker. Maybe not quite, but it's really starting to feel all of these consistency hits adding up. The most recent of which, of course, being the Q and Cool Tune Synchro semi-limits. Now, stuff like Earthbound Prisoner Stone Sweeper and Overtuning feel less optional and more mandatory. But those all have their weaknesses as well. Stone Sweeper makes you a lot weaker to draw on Lockbird, and Overtuning isn't even really a starter. It's just an extender, requiring you to already have a tuner in play. So yeah, it's kind of getting... It's weird, because I want to be like, oh, it's getting so rough for Cool Tune, but like the deck is still really, really good. It deserves these hits. Don't get me wrong there. I'm not saying that they are not warranted at all. However, I do think that they are starting to add up, and I really do think that Cool Tune might end up... I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if it takes any more hits on the ban list, or if it's just going to be power creep that kind of, causes it to trend downward over time. It's only just now starting to slightly trend downward in paper play with their recent ban list changes, or at least the ones in the OCG I'm thinking of. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what exactly happens with Cool Tune. For the time being, though, I do still think it is a tier 1 deck for sure. I don't think there's any doubt for me there. I actually kind of want to put Draco Tail a little bit higher than Cool Tune nowadays. It's weird, because I think they're about equal. I'll do it like that. And then, of course, Branded is still definitely a tier 1 deck. Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's so difficult to say whether Branded or Radiant Typhoon is actually the best deck in the room. Because Radiant Typhoon... Oops, it'll be more like that. Because Radiant Typhoon's a lot more accessible in terms of, like, skill, right? It's a lot easier to play than Branded, which is historically just one of the more complex decks in any given meta it's in. I've always said this, you know, if this person is a really skilled Branded player, then I think, for me, without a doubt, Branded is the best deck in the room. But if we're talking, like, the average Yu-Gi-Oh player, I think that, you know, Radiant Typhoon, like, Zodiac Radiant Typhoon, in the average Yu-Gi-Oh player's hands is probably deadlier than Branded. But if it's a competitive tier list and we're assuming optimal competitive play, it should probably be something like this. All right, K9 VS continues to be a pretty decent tier 2 deck. It's like pretty comparable to Orcust. Maybe I'll put it like somewhere like that. I don't know though, with Dominus Spark being played in Orcust decks, they're getting a lot more popular. Maybe I will leave it like this. I think also I'm going to put Magnet Warrior at the top of tier 3. Again, I don't even think this because of the floodgates getting limited. I think you could just make an argument, or not limited, banned. I think you could just make an argument that Magnet Warrior in general, with or without them, is like upper tier 3. If you had it in tier 2, I definitely wouldn't fault you. Lunalight, I do think is still a pretty decent tier 2 deck. And Malice. Malice also got a buff from Dominus Spark being released. And I think more than any other deck, I've been seeing more Malice with as far as like decks that are getting more popular again because of the Dominus Spark, right? Orcus, of course, being another of these. Mitsurugi being another of these as well. Lunalight also, honestly, being one of these too. The Dominus Spark is really interesting because, like, light and dark feels like it should be more restrictive, being only 2 attributes, but there are so many decks that only use the dark attribute, or, you know, can very easily only really rely on dark and or light cards, that it's becoming, it's just interesting how it's affecting the meta now. It's becoming a force that you'll see, I think, quite a bit more of as time goes on. But I'm looking at the tier list here, and I think I'm pretty pleased with my placement for this one. So definitely let me know what you think in the comments below as well. Super appreciate you watching all the way to the end like this. It's a great way of supporting not just me, but any smaller YouTube channel. So I really do have to thank you very much for that. We also have to thank, though, our YouTube members and Patreon subscribers for their very generous support. So we're going to move on to the outro and do so now. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which, by the way, is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.